What was your name?
My name's Mike.
Mike?
Yep.
Okay. So I kind of looked around and everything. What do you guys all got going on here? I know there's the immersion section here. You got air in the warehouse, and you got storage containers, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly it. So this is about 1.5 meg in here. Then we've got a 4 meg chunk that's in that air farm.
Okay.
And then the remainder of those containers that are out there are all the Bitmain ant boxes. So they all hold 207 miners. Some of them we've actually started retrofitting to take 3-phase PDUs for T21.
Okay.
So
nice.
we've done a little bit of that now too.
Cool. So what made you go with immersion on this setup?
Out of necessity. So when we first got started, we were doing it out of a t-shirt shop.
Yeah.
And the only way we could run 400 and some miners was by actually using immersion so that you could kick that heat outside and blow it off with dry coolers.
The immersion actually didn't start here then, it started at a t-shirt shop?
Initially we started out of a t-shirt shop.
Okay.
So this was right out of COVID. We kind of got the itch and we started doing GPU rigs for Ethereum.
I noticed a couple power supplies back there.
Yep.
I was like, oh, GPU. That's what I do. I'm a GPU guy.
Okay, yeah, so I don't know if you're ever looking for them, but the problem is they're older generation ones now. I've got a lot of the like 2080 or 2070 Ti's, some Radian BIIs.
I might be interested.
Yeah, I'll definitely get you a list and whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we started doing that, and then we bought a couple of Z15 miners, and the Z15s really just kind of started scratching that itch for us.
Yeah.
And we brought in 10 S19 Pros.
Okay.
Plugged them in upstairs at this t-shirt shop, and the room that we put them into just heated up to 130 degrees. We had no clue what we were doing, right? And we're like, well, shit, we've got another like 300 coming. How are we gonna do this? So we did a little research. We found Immersion. Ordered up a system, then went down to Mining Disrupt, walked through, talked to some different vendors, ended up meeting Dan Wong with Edge Data Solutions, and then
I was going to ask, you have two separate systems here.
Yep.
So this is, are they both from the same supplier or different suppliers?
Different supplier, yeah. Okay. So there's actually 3 different types of tubs. There's the Edge, like original ones that we got that we had to modify a lot to get to work for us. We have a prototype that they were testing out that actually had individual plenums for each miner. Because the failure on these is that it's one long plenum, and it's hard to get the flow to go through the miner and not just blow right up the wall.
Got it.
So we had to find a way to modify that. When we were out at Bitcoin conference 2 years ago in Miami, we saw TMG, and they were, they had some pretty great specs, and so we figured we'd buy one.
The first one you tried?
Yeah, and it's a great tub. It works really well. The one knock that I'd say is that even these tubs would do well too. So it calls for 10 degrees cooler incoming, but yeah, so it calls for 10 degree cooler fluid coming into it. So like those tubs would do well with 10 degree cooler like fluid as well. So
got it.
But yeah, so that's why we got into this.
So is this front tub, is that the one that's different than all the rest as far as back there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so what's cool about this, guys, if you look, there's it's kind of like a grill, like a propane grill.
Yeah.
So it's got a long tube basically that's shooting fluid straight up, and then it's got individual plenum plates that are interchangeable. So if you were to put a different type of miner in there, you can swap out that plate to make sure you have proper flow going through the machine.
So you modified this one.
This was a prototype one that we worked with Edge on after we had worked on a lot of these.
And these are all.
Yeah. So this is actually like a Gen 3. We've got their original prototype that in there not used right now, but pretty slick. But this one came with a larger pump, larger heat exchanger, a little more beefed up. So. And
then I noticed the pumping underneath with the heat exchanger. The water just comes in from the pipes to cool the.
Correct. Yep.
The liquid.
Yep. Yeah. So basically it's like a closed system. So the tanks have dielectric fluid in it that it's just constantly circulating through. Yeah. There's that heat exchanger underneath that's just basically trading that heat off with the water loop that goes outside. Yep.
And that runs out to a radiator or something?
Yeah, 2 dry coolers that we've got.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you miss the dry coolers?
We don't have to up here.
Okay.
Yeah, in August it does get pretty warm, but it's all right.
It's fine.
Yeah, and especially like right now, a lot of this stuff's sitting in like efficiency mode. Yeah. So I'm not kicking out as many BTUs of heat.
And is that just because the
earnings?
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Is it all Bitcoin?
It's all Bitcoin.
All Bitcoin.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what'd you do with the Z15s? You just get rid of them?
Nope, they're sitting over there in that other building just by themselves.
By themselves.
Honestly, they've never died.
Yeah.
I
You're
took
still
them in.
running them?
Yep, I took them in once, cleaned them because they deserved a bath, and then brought it back out. And then we do have maybe 40 Litecoin.
Is it all S19 Pros, or have you gone into S21s?
We're in a mix, so we've got S19 Pros, J Pros, S19s. We've got some T21s with the 3-phase PDUs that we just installed, actually in the air farm there, and then the first row of the containers outside.
And do you do cooling, or you have your own node, or how do you go about it?
Actually, we're using Ocean's new setup. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were, I guess, the second group that they sent one of those out to test their new one. So,
got it.
Yeah. So right now all of our equipment's pointed at Ocean.
Okay. Cool. Nice. And do you form your own blocks and do the template and all
We
that?
haven't even got that far yet.
Not
so
that
that
far
part,
yet.
when they announced it, we're like, all right, well, we got to learn this. So
all right, cool.
Pretty excited.
Awesome. And then for switching, you're using Unify, I noticed.
Just in this area, we use a lot of ZIL. I never know how to say it, but ZIXEL.
Okay.
Great equipment, price is awesome, easy to set up.
Okay.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then do you have like a server room or anything like that? And you guys?
We just have our shop where we keep our main rack, and and then we got a firewall and then a pickaxe PC, some stuff all over there.
Two pipes coming in, or just one? You got a backup?
We've got a backup at Starlink, and then we've got fiber coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I assume out here you probably all the cable providers are on the same backbone, I assume.
Yeah, that's why we went with Starlink as the backup.
All right.
So we got 500 meg service, which is plenty for what we're doing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks for showing me around. Is there anything else I should be aware of as far as like what difficulties you ran into with Immersion? You kind of talked about a little bit of them going through the prototype and all that. I assume that's because that was early on. Now they've probably got that.
Yeah, now it's great. Yeah, we've got that all dialed in. The biggest thing was making sure that you have proper flow. So these tubs were supposed to work with J Pros when we bought them, but they didn't realize that the chassis were a little longer. So the only way we could cover them was to overfill the tub, and then that caused to have a lot of hot pockets because instead of spilling over, it would just kind of, some of it would flow, and exactly.
Interesting.
So
you got to pay attention to that.
Yeah, so we extended the weirs.
I do have a question because everything's uncovered. Like, what about contamination of the fluid, stuff like that?
We've got a dialysis machine that we run through that basically is just cycling, but they're not filtered because if you filter it, it ends up reducing the flow too much. For the longest time while we were doing our construction, we were actually we had a poly sheet like room in here, but now that we're done building out, we just keep it clean. Okay, so
cool. And would you still go with Immersion, or would you pretty much stick with air at this point?
It depends. Like deployment, it's a lot more expensive to deploy the Immersion. Your equipment lasts longer, which is nice. Okay. The container stuff was just so easy to kick out. I mean, all you're doing is
just order a pre-built container, plop it down on a slab, and energize it and go.
Land the power, bring the internet in, rack your miners, done. Yeah, and it's all like passive air.
There are containers now with Immersion that you can just order.
Yep, we've got some of those that we run out in North Dakota right now. We're doing some flare gas. We're testing that out. So.
Okay, nice.
Yep. So that's pretty neat.
How did you source the flare gas? That's always an interesting question because it's always one of those things where it seems theoretical. People are like, oh, I got flare gas would be a great option, but it's like when you start digging into it, it's like, how do you find somebody that's willing to do that?
We aligned ourselves with a group that just is all about energy generation, so that's their thing. So we handle the Bitcoin side of things. They handle, finding the contracts for gas that's available. Okay. There was a group in North Dakota. I'm not sure which mining company it was. They just got hit with a huge fine. I think it was over $1 billion.
Really?
That for flare gas.
Really?
They were flaring off, and they got hit with a big.
Not flaring properly.
So didn't that kind of incentivize them?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So they're basically. I mean, they want people to come and use it because it saves them on the carbon tax that they have to pay. So.
Got it. Okay. So that's really what you're looking for, then,
right?
Is to service that kind of industry. Cool. Awesome, man. As far as like getting all the power together, finding electricians, all that, like, is that like?
We're
meeting people locally.
Yeah, we're fortunate. So we've got other businesses. So we've got Just for Kicks, which is the dance studios and everything. And then we have the Tea Hive, which is apparel manufacturing, customization, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we've worked with Holden Electric and High Tech, and we have an HVAC guy that's pretty dang good too that we've known for years.
Okay.
So we basically just told him, hey, we want to do this project, and they came in, sat down with us, and we just kind of went over everything.
The electrical work was really clean.
Yeah.
I'm a systems engineer, so I set up data centers. I was admiring the racking, all that.
Yeah.
Everything's pretty nice.
Yeah, they did a great job. You should have seen, I mean, the original room that we started in, we had 12 of these tubs, and the room was barely any bigger than the space those 12 tubs required.
Yeah.
You had to like crawl over the tubes to get to the inner row of them. I mean, it was just a pain, but the way they had everything all piped in and made it happen like within a 20,000 square foot facility that's a big, already running manufacturing, it was pretty crazy. They did an awesome job.
So you got into it with GPU mining. I'll like wrap up on that.
Yep.
When did you get out? After the Ethereum merge? Or?
Yeah, as soon as they went to away from proof of work, and then when we found this site is really when we started kind of expanding out. So we'd started looking for power, and then realized that our city actually had excess. Okay. So some 20 years ago, they'd done a study and determined that the city was going to grow by so many thousands of people, and then they did a bypass and put in the highway that goes all the way through Baxter, which is where the studio's at over there. So it didn't grow, and they built out this 150 megawatt substation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so for 20 years, they never turned on 2/3 of it.
Nice,
so,
so then for that, you just found the location, found out about that, talked to the power. Is it a co-op or a company?
It's like a utility, yeah.
Utility?
Okay. And yeah, so basically we found out it was available. We initially were trying to work with the city to buy some property, but then we found this piece here that already had a structure in place. So then we put in an offer here, and then immediately put in a request for power and started building.
Awesome.
So yeah, we've been in here for about 2.5 years now, kind of doing all of this. And it's funny too, if you watched us as we were growing, there was, we'd always go in these like huge spurts. You could tell when we found money again. You know, it's like build, stop. Oh, we got more money, another 5 megawatts, you know, and so it's
How are you managing that? Like obviously with where we're at in the cycle, you said you're already in efficiency mode, that sort of thing. Like, do you have a department that looks at like projections? Like,
yeah, we got a couple guys that specifically Jared and Steve, which they're on more the business development side of things, and then the group that runs the farm, we're kind of the guys that just manage that portion of it. But how we kind of paid for this was we used our clients, so we sold machines. To help pay for infrastructure.
So you do a lot of hosting?
About 25% of the farm.
25% hosted?
Yep, so the rest of it's self-mining.
So then that helps cover some of the power costs and all that?
Yeah, and then we found a bank, we kind of kept going along, we found a bank that was willing to loan us money for equipment. There's a credit union down in St. Cloud, fantastic. It's just St. Cloud.
I think that they talked today,
right? Chase was here for that. So they're fantastic to work with. And then there was another group called VFI that finance a lot for us too. So
awesome. And then are you more revenue focused, or like is there a holding strategy?
We're more revenue focused right now. The goal is to hold, right? But the problem is we're having exactly. We're just having to sell what we have to pay for power.
Yeah.
The goal is to hold. You know, once you start seeing earnings
do
go.
Do a lot of trade analysis to at least micromanage.
Yep, Jared does. Yeah. So our guy that handles that portion of it, he takes care of all of that.
Okay. Cool.
He'll even do some trading and stuff too on the side just to make it happen.
Well, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. I'll stop this.